Hello and welcome to my presentation. I will be talking through a teaching resource that I've created for the purpose of improving learning within art and design education. According to Ofsted, children see before they speak, make marks before they write, build before they walk, but their ability to appreciate and interpret what they observe, communicate what they think and feel, or make what they imagine and invent is influenced by the quality of their art, craft and design education. I will explain a strong theological underpinning to demonstrate my knowledge and understanding of the teaching of art and design education within secondary schools. My resource was created for a Key Stage 3 Year 7 class who are currently studying the formal elements of art and design, following the criteria and expectations of the Edexcel Art Exam Board. The Edexcel Art Exam Board explains that the GCSE Art and Design qualification requires students to acquire and develop technical skills through working with a broad range of media, materials, techniques, processes and technologies with purpose and intent. After observing the class, I felt the students had reached a stage where I was confident in their ability in art and design and in my ability to manage their behaviour to move on to using clay. As the students had successfully worked with paper, watercolour and pens, I was happy to introduce the techniques associated with using clay. The students' work task was to create a clay owl using shape, line, form, pattern and texture. This was a key factor in the national curriculum for art and design to become proficient in drawing, painting, sculpture and other art and design techniques. Once the clay owl had been cured correctly in the kiln, the students were tasked to select primary Christmas colours and 2 different designs to decorate on their owls. This allowed the students to draw upon knowledge gained in previous lessons on primary colours and patterns. This also allowed them to use their imagination and expressiveness to create bespoke, unique pieces. Previous classes in art were structured and specific. However, the lesson using clay allowed the students to choose the patterns and texture that they wanted to work with. This was important as the first part of the clay lessons involved the students in following instructions and using templates. Allowing the students to show individual art form and design is essential in an art class. Prior to the creation of the clay owls, I discussed the topic with the class and set a homework of creating an owl out of nature sources. This can be seen in the right-hand corner of the slide. The objective of the homework was to allow the students to explore the proposed topic. This also enabled the students the element of choice to individualise their homework. The homework preparation for the creation of clay owls allowed the students to experiment and self-direct with different shapes within nature to create texture and pattern. In addition, the students were able to observe previous examples of students' clay owls. This enabled all abilities to approach the creation of a clay owl with an end product in mind. As well as successful examples, the students were also shown examples of clay owls that were faulty because the clay had not set properly, resulting in parts of the clay falling off. This sets an example of common mistakes when working with clay and the consequences this may lead to. According to Richard Hickman and Anthony Hayes, students need to stretch and explore, learning to reach beyond one's capacities, to explore playfully without a preconceived plan, and embrace the opportunity to learn from mistakes and accidents. I implemented this theory when allowing the students to spend time exploring with the clay to create their own patterns and experiment with the clay tools for the first time. I deliberately started my demonstration from scratch to mirror the students' activities and allow me to verbally respond to any problems or misunderstandings along the way. I understood the knowledge of Addison and Berger's theory, ensuring access to sensory requirements through visual and tactile materials, resources in art and design demonstrates and activates. I can see this has a positive impact on the students' art and design learning process. The visual responses for the clay owl included both visual observation of the demonstration and the PowerPoints and the actual tactile manipulation of the clay. This process agreed with the Addison and Berger theories, as the students appeared to be positive and enjoying the lesson. Are examples of resources created for students throughout the lesson. The PowerPoint slides give clear instructions and visual diagrams to assist the students, enabling the students to have visual interpretation of the objectives and to assist in the understanding of the lesson. The PowerPoint slides were presented as a sequence of lessons to ensure that all students followed the correct order and procedures to create the clay owls. Students were shown examples of visual clay owls. Some examples were incomplete to identify with different stages. Others were completed. In addition to the PowerPoint was an A1 resource board, which was visible to the students, which were referred to throughout my demonstration. Elliot Einsner states, "The workplace that children employ is a laboratory of their efforts. This laboratory makes it possible for children to find out what happened when one thing rather than another is done." Once the clay owls were ready to be put in the kiln, a lot of students asked questions as to why and how long the kiln would take. Anticipating this might happen, I provided a slide within my presentation to explain why the clay owls had gone into a kiln to be cooked. I used artist terminology to provide this information. It was my hope that in making of the clay owls, this would be an experience that the students would not only learn from and enjoy, but also provide a memory that helps to retain information within their long-term memory. Working memory can be identified as the memory system where small amounts of information are stored for a very short duration. This is evident in a classroom of children with a limited capacity to store information. If working memory is overloaded, there is a greater risk that the content being taught will not be understood by the learner. I ensured that each time I gathered the students around the demonstration table, that they would raise their hands and ask questions. I used artist vocabulary and terminology when answering questions. The objective of this was to increase the students' knowledge and artist vocabulary within their long-term memory. This process is evident in the book of Understanding Art, a Guide for Teachers, where it states, "Throughout talking about what has been perceived, they can expand their restrictive vocabulary and become more confident in its use." I use resources to provide clarity on what the lesson objectives were within the sequence of lessons. This is similar to the scaffolding process used in education to break a large topic into smaller tasks, allowing the stage of the process to be completed before the next step would come. This helped to ensure the students remained to target the objective and not become overwhelmed. Here we have step-by-step instructions, which were displayed on the whiteboard and additionally given out as printouts on each table for students to be able to view whilst working. According to Addison and Berger, by means of mass productions and newer technologies, students are now learning through visual arts. This theory enabled me to adapt resources to teach students to understand expectations of work visually and allowed them to ask questions on stages of the process they did not understand through visual learning and information by demonstration. Finally, as can be seen above the clay diagrams, inspiration was taken from artists Robert and Sarah Deloney. These students are familiar with these artists, as they have been referencing them throughout their work, interpreting pattern, print, shape, and colour. This has allowed me to provide the class with previous reference and explanation. Nicholas Addison identifies, within the scheme of work, the extent of which work is considered both in terms of prior knowledge and available time is evident in each individual art class. By drawing upon students' prior knowledge that they learned from previous lessons, I was able to use my time within the scheme of work more effectively to reinforce the learning which helped the students to retain information more effectively.